Alrighty, it's time for another Drawn Out, and today I'm doing Spyro. So this one is a little different from the other Drawn Outs in a couple of ways. First, I'm drawing a dude, and this may come as a surprise to you because so far, if you've seen other stuff on my channel, you've only seen me draw girls so far. But I actually prefer drawing dudes. They're just easier to me. They make more sense. It's always the titties that like mess me up. Yeah, that probably stems from a lifetime of drawing Achievement Hunter fan art when I was younger. You'll notice, by the way, pay attention, I really struggle with his legs, because I kind of had an idea in mind, but I realized that my idea would have the two limbs closest to us both be bent, because he's got his one bent arm, and I thought about that same leg being up and being like ready to go, but it looked awkward, so I needed to kind of reconfigure what I was doing with him. Another way that this one is different from usual is that this is not a Ruby character, because I do like other things than just Ruby. I haven't played many Spyro games, actually. I've only played the ones where they're like the weird ones that are totally different, where he's voiced by Elijah Wood. They're fun. They were fine enough, but I did use the recent remakes that just happened as my basis for designing Spyro here, because that just felt more kind of accurate to what the character was originally intended to be. And the third way that this video is a little different is that I am interpreting a design. I'm not coming up with a wholly original design, because I'm taking the design of Spyro as a dragon and interpreting it as a human. This is one of my favorite things to do. I love doing this, because I like to do this with Pokemon and Animal Crossing villagers, like, a lot. It's just really fun trying to think of how you can keep the character identifiable, while adapting them to being humanoid. A common thing you'll see a lot if people do things like this is they'll tend to just like staple wings and tails and stuff onto a human. Like a not uncommon thing would be for someone to just give Spyro actual dragon wings here. Personally, I always think it's more interesting to try to find a way to avoid that. Like, yeah, I could have just given him dragon wings, but I think it's more fun and more thought-provoking to give him this kind of cape deal, which still give him the silhouette of wings. It conveys the wings properly while keeping him actually human. The same thing with his sword. His sword, the hilt is designed to look like his tail, because I'm pretty sure Spyro can do like a spin move and hit things with his tail. I don't know, I haven't played those games, but this still allows him to be able to hit things with what is interpreted as the tail, while also, because it's a sword, it gets to stay near his hips, where a tail would be, because a sword is usually hilted at your waist. So yeah, and also I wanted him to have this sort of kind of fantasy vibe, because, you know, Spyro's going on an adventure and going to magical worlds and different fun places, and I wanted to really encapsulate the idea of Spyro. I really wanted to make it read as the character. Like, it could be the same exact game, but they're humans instead of dragons. So, and Spyro just reads as young and adventurous, and so that was the design I went for with him. You'll notice, by the way, that while I had just mentioned that I tend to prefer to not just put wings and tails and stuff onto humanoid characters that I'm, like, reinterpreting, horns is the thing that I am most likely going to bend that rule for. I like horns, I just think they're cool. And for Spyro specifically, I had really waffled on the idea of giving him horns or not here, because, so they're a really important part of the character design. Like, in game, you're like headbutting things a lot, and they're one of the biggest parts of Spyro. So I knew I needed to have horns. And usually, you know, it's easy to translate horns into being like jewelry, like a tiara, or just headgear. But one, I didn't want him to look too much like Reg from Made in Abyss with like a horned helmet thing. Cause with the cape and shorts, he was looking a little similar to Reg. And that's okay, because, you know, they're playing similar roles in their stories. But yeah, I didn't want to make him look too much like Reg. And also, I didn't want to cover up his hair, because Spyro the dragon has these yellow spines. You know, it's another really important element of his character design, are the spines going down his back. And they translated into that spiky, fun hair that I gave him, and I didn't want to cover that up. So I figured I could bend the rule and give him horns, and that could be what makes him like the special protagonist of the story. Kind of like Ico. If you've ever played Ico, the boy has horns, and, you know, it felt like it could fit into the world well enough. So yeah. So belts are a really interesting thing to, like, learn how to do properly, because you know, basically every single design on Earth nowadays has belts on it, because, you know, you gotta attach your fantasy gear to you somehow. But once you learn the small details that you need to make a belt work, they become so easy, and it's no wonder. Like, not only is it just an easy kind of cheat to being like, this part's boring, I'll put a belt on the character, but also they're kind of easy to draw, so it's an easy but fancy looking thing. The important part is you just have to make sure it has depth, you know? If it's a flat, like, if it looks too flat, it won't be convincing. So you just gotta make sure your belts successfully have dimension, and everyone will be like, wow, nice belts. Look at those cool belts you drew. This is a really fun pose I put Spyro in. I knew I wanted him to be I wanted it to kind of look like sort of concept art, but not in this is a character design sheet sort of way, but rather like the kind of thing you would see on the back of the box, or in a magazine, like, buy this Spyro game, whoa, it's so cool, look at how fun this adventure boy is. So it's gonna have a really simple background, but I think it really works. Oh man, those are just good belts, sorry. I usually don't put too much effort into my belts, so it's nice. Every time you put in a little extra effort, even if it's kind of like a pain in the ass, you know, like if it's like, oh, it'll make it take like 30 more minutes to do whatever step it is that you're kind of reluctantly not wanting to do. It'll probably help, though. Always adding a little extra effort to the art can make it infinitely better. It's the devil's in the details when it comes to illustrating. Kind of like this step that I'm doing. I didn't need to add a little kind of dark shadow areas with the line art here, because I'm also going to shade him using cell shading. But it's another layer of depth and visual interest, and it really enhances the picture. So yeah, even though sometimes steps can be a little bit of a pain, your artwork will almost definitely benefit from it. So, you know, it's not that, because sometimes something you hear a lot when you're making art and like you're learning about how to do art is this idea that you need to take more time. And growing up, what that meant to me always sounded like it was like, just draw slower, because I didn't know how else you could take more time to draw a picture. What they should really be saying instead is, don't be afraid to dedicate time to small details. It's not just, oh, this picture took you an hour longer to do, that makes it automatically better. No, it's that taking that extra time to do not superfluous steps, but extra steps to your art to make it pop is really beneficial. But don't rush yourself, you know? You have to learn. There's no way to just be taught how to do art once you get to a certain level. Like, you know, you can be taught things like how color theory works and composition, and you can be taught and learn how to illustrate and how to study the human body, but there comes a point where it's kind of up to you. Like, you have to take the next steps once you reach a certain level of artistry, and that can be different for everyone. There are no rules in art. It's kind of like leaving the tutorial level, and now the game isn't holding your hand anymore. So don't be frustrated if you feel like you've hit a wall in terms of growth. The fact that you are recognizing that you want to improve is good. The step that you have to take next is you have to study what it is you're unhappy with about your art, and then look at other artists that you fancy, and study what parts of those that you do like. Personally, I usually do this like in one small step at a time. Like, I was unhappy with how I was drawing eyes, and so I learned how to draw different types of eyes. And like, that was it. So don't expect to learn how to do a whole new art style or to make drastic leaps in improvement. Improvement is steady. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So yeah, don't get caught up and if it feels like you've hit a wall. You probably have, in a way, hit a wall, but it's just one small one. The goal is not the goal isn't to just reach the top of that wall, but every inch you climb up it is improvement, and it's a good thing. Something I did different with Spyro here that I usually don't do is I put like real detail in his hand as well. I usually don't add fingernails and stuff, but his hand looked flat and I wanted to give it extra detail. Also, because Spyro's got claws, and I'm firstly interpreting those in his boots, because his boots have like steel-tipped toes, which they look like his claws. But also because I took the time to give his hand a little extra detail. You'll see, it's like the very last thing I do in the coloring stage. But I color in his nails. So he has painted nails, and they get to be more claws. It's really fun. Interpreting characters like this is always fun, because you do have to think about, like, not just how to design them, but it makes you study their design, you know? I wouldn't have thought about Spyro ever this much if I didn't decide to redesign him. This thing here, okay, so I was worried at first, because Spyro doesn't have a whole lot of colors on him, and I am kind of cheating by having 2 different shades of purple, and also there's like a couple different shades of gold on him. You know, there's his yellow hair gold, and then his more orange gold in his horns and armor. So I'm cheating a little bit, but I didn't want to just add a color that wasn't already on him, necessarily. The only deviation I make is the brown that's in his eyebrows, because that felt more like a plucky adventurer, you know? It's a similar look you'd find on Link, is blonde hair but brown eyebrows, you know? Just makes him look younger. And then I also incorporate that brown into one of his belts. And I was worried at first that they would all kind of bleed together, but you have to trust yourself, because if you look at some great character designs, and also just in real life, you don't always have conveniently different shades of whatever it is you're working with. Like someone can wear a white shirt and also white pants, and they don't have to be different shades. But how do they not look like a big mass of white? How do you not lose the details of their shirt and pants? Value. That's the thing. That's why shading and lighting exist. Because, so, back to Spyro, I was worried you'd lose the tip of his sword hilt in the armor that is identically colored that it's up against, you know? Which is why I thought about angling it away from him at first, but that looked bad, which that was way back at the beginning of the video. But I knew that I was going to shade it, and because of that, the darker value on the chest plate, because of the shading, helps the hilt stand out. They don't look like they're all bleeding together, because values is what imply depth and can help kind of differentiate identically colored things in a piece. So if you find yourself consistently making designs or art where you're losing details because everything's the same color, don't necessarily think I have to add more colors to my picture, because that's not necessarily true. Look at Ruby Rose as a good example of why you don't need to, you know? But rather, don't be afraid to use values to break up that, which includes adding lighting and shading. So yeah, always think about how light affects things, and it'll help your art improve a lot. And this is another thing. So I fancy myself an alright artist, at least, but you know, you don't always have to accept advice given. Not all advice is good. You know, sometimes people want to give you hints and tricks and tips that they're like a lower level, like they're more of a beginner than you, and it's like, cool, I don't need that help. Or they want to offer a suggestion, and even if it's in a good like mindset, like, oh, I think your picture could benefit from this. Sometimes it can, sometimes it won't. It's up to you as the artist to determine what advice and what critiques are worthwhile to pay attention to. Like when I was in college, you know, my teacher, you know, there was one specifically that I remember. She was great, but she had recommended I change something for one picture, and it was a great improvement. I really valued her opinion, so I would ask her, like, what do you think? How do you think I could improve this? But there was one time where she had been, like, offered a suggestion, and I can't remember what it was specifically, but I rejected her opinion. I appreciated the offer, like the advice, but I decided to stick to my guns, because ultimately it is your art. It's your picture. You are the one illustrating it, or painting it, or modeling it. And so you have to be the one brave enough to make the final decisions. You know, it's good to get advice, especially when you have advisors or teachers available to give it to you. But there has to come a time where you need to be brave enough to make these conclusions on your own, and to recognize when advice is not necessary, you know? So value when people try to offer advice. You know, never yell at someone or get real huffy if someone tries to give you a tip to help you improve, you know? Unless they're rude about it. You don't have to be. If they're an asshole while trying to give you advice, maybe don't value their opinion that much. But yeah, it's up to you to figure out what advice is worth it. Oh, something you may have noticed is, so I'm still working at Clip Studio Paint. I love it. It's delightful. It's also very affordable. I suggest it with my whole heart. But I figured out how to use masking layers. So you guys don't see, I do a lot of art. I want to make comics, which means I'm drawing a lot, and you don't see most of it. So I'm constantly learning. I appreciate it that some of you guys are like trying to give me tips. I don't need it, because I've always learned better when I can study it and figure it out on my own. I appreciate it, but yeah, I've learned how to use masking layers and how to use the enclose and fill tool really efficiently, or rather, not really efficiently, but I've learned how to use them more. I'm learning the tools that I have available and growing with every piece I make. I really recommend, if you're new to Clip Studio Paint and you're a little lost on how to use all these mechanics at your disposal, there are, first of all, tons of videos detailing how to do all this stuff. You know, YouTube is your best friend. You can learn through YouTube. But I really suggest you look up HoloLive, and you go to Ina, that's I-N-A. She looks like a Cthulhu monster. She's great. Look up her, she's got a lot of drawing streams, and specifically her first couple, she talks about a lot of the things that I'm using. I learned a lot of tips by watching Ina. So, if you're kind of lost on Clip Studio Paint, I suggest do that. Also, change your DPI is a DPI, the amount of pixels on your canvas. Make it bigger. Make it 350, because Clip Studio Paint defaults to like 20. It's that's hyperbolic, but more pixels means more detail, you know? So, it can really help, because I first had tried Clip Studio Paint a while ago, but I didn't like how pixelated everything looked. It felt really crunchy, and I didn't like it. It's because I had no pixels to work with on my canvas. So yeah, raise your pixels. That first screen when you open up a new canvas in Clip Studio Paint, that's important. Look at that. Don't just hit yes, go, and then start painting. And wow, Spyro's done. I feel like I didn't talk about him too much. I am really happy with this design though. I love how I allocated the colors. The orange just being in his cape wings kind of helps them stand out. It's a good focal point for you to look at. He turned out super cute. I feel like I'm not too good at drawing cute characters. I do tend to prefer to draw cool ones, you know, with scary, angry eyes and that kind of stuff. But I'm glad that Spyro came out. He turned out just as, like, optimistic and hopeful and naive looking as I wanted. I think he conveys the feel of Spyro real well. Look at him. I want to play that game. If you want to know, I picked the skin tone because I worked with the yellow of his chest plate. So that's the funnest part, by the way, when you're interpreting characters that are not humanoid into humans, is figuring out what the skin tone would be. It could be absolutely totally valid to kind of roll with the purple and instead turn him like a darker skin tone. Yeah, that's delightful. And then yeah, here's the simple background of the concept art. I guess the sparkles are kind of like sparks. Is that what the dragonfly's name is? Sparks? That's what we'll go with. But yeah, he looks like a cute little adventurer, and I'm really happy with how I allocated all the colors on him. And yeah, let me know how you think about Spyro. Have you played the games where he was voiced by Elijah Wood? Please tell me, because I feel like no one else on Earth ever have. And also, by the way, as a quick aside, patrons always get to see drawn-outs early, and every now and then I'll be having them vote on what I do next. And if patrons go to Patreon right now, they should find that I do have a... they can vote for the next one right now. So yeah, I'm done rambling. Have fun drawing art.